Okay, here we have some choir stuff. So this is amazing. I have very little to say about this. Well, no, I'll probably have a variety of things to say, but on the whole, like check this out. It just looks great. It's amazing. There's some considerable challenges having to do with choral notation. Not that this is like a really weird avant-garde piece or anything, but it's still sometimes lyrics can be a real pain to space out. The dynamics in every staff, that can be kind of annoying and just makes things really cluttered. Look at this, we have a niente. Ooh, so nice. So I'm just gonna kind of blow through it, starting with my favorite thing, which is there's a title page. So good. And this is kind of what you call front matter, I guess, but just a little bit about the song. Note on the arrangement. If this were an orchestral piece, you would put in the instrumentation, you would put in any special notes, like performance notes. But this is just really cool. Really, really nice. And then we get into it. So again, we're going to actually talk about more engraving stuff than orchestration. This is great. So it starts on the right-hand page, if you know what I mean. Like when you open, if this were put into a book, this first page of music would be on the right side, and you can tell because the page number is over here, and that's like you can tick that box off. Nice big title with the dedication in italics above the title, which is how you're supposed to do it. And then you have the attribution, like the words and music and the arrangement. Fantastic. And even the names as all caps. And just great. So here we have more than just a tempo. We have the Italian term moderato, and then just a little note with elegance. Right? So this is like one of the few places where the composer can kind of editorialize the notation and just say in a couple words, give some indication how people are supposed to interpret the music. Okay, moving on. Nice font. Check out this MP. Ooh, so nice. So this is, I actually I assumed it was made in Dorico because it looks a lot like Bravura, which is the default Dorico font, which is inky and thick. But in this case, the arranger here he's using Sibelius, I believe, and he's using Norfolk, which is a sort of a Bravura. I don't know if it's fair to call it a Bravura clone, but it is mimicking Bravura. But it's a fantastic font. I think it's really beautiful. Interesting. So for people who might not be familiar with choral music, the every staff gets a dynamic, and they go above. That is to say, the dynamics go above the staff. Presumably, it's just to be out of the way of the lyrics, although sometimes they're still in the way. So one thing that can kind of be a disaster in vocal music is lyric spacing, especially, well, I don't know. In my experience, the way Sibelius automatically spaces lyrics it can lead to a lot of collisions, so you have to do a lot of manual fixing. I don't know, maybe this person can comment on that. In this case, it looks great. The extenders, so this is called an extender, this ooh, goes to where it ought to go, which is, in this case, it doesn't fill the entire bar, it actually terminates at this note. Here's one thing that I often get confused about, which is when we're going from ooh to joining in with the sopranos line with these actual lyrics, first set my, sometimes it's like I want to capitalize it. You shouldn't capitalize it, but I want to do something like ... like to indicate that they're carrying on with a sentence that's already started. It just confuses me. This is probably exactly how you do it. I just got confused. However, I will say, I wonder if maybe orchestration-wise you would want to start their line on the word I, like on beat 3 here. Just a thought. I also was wondering why these mezzo pianos weren't centered on the note, why they're centered on the bar line. Maybe that's a thing. This slur looks weird. maybe it's fine. I don't know why it's going down. It looks like, I don't know, basically every notation software program slurs look weird at the ends of a system. I don't know. I don't know if you like manually adjusted this one, because this one looks fantastic. But it's weird that it looks different from that. I don't know. No biggie, really. Yeah. Oh, I have notes. Okay, I have notes. Honestly, like, it looks great. I mean, here's an example of where you might go in, and maybe you did this. You might go in and just like move things around a little bit when the lyrics get really tight. Like this, she wheeled. It's close, right? Not a huge deal, but it's just an example of where things can get kind of tight. Punctuation, bar 8, 6, 7, 8. Punctuation, comma, comma, yeah, okay. Comma, makes sense, because it's not the end of a sentence, because the sopranos carry on singing. But here we have comma, and then ooze. And then here we have, I think, what we actually want, which is period. So just being aware of really boring stuff like your commas and your periods. So I would just say, may as well put a period there. The other thing that I would look for, which has been done basically perfectly throughout the song, is word division. Narrow, right? Narrow. Where do you put the hyphen? Do you go N-A hyphen R-R-O-W? No. Do you go N-A-R-R hyphen O-W? No. In the case, I believe the rule is in the case of like doubled consonants, like bottom, narrow, whatever, you put it in between the doubled consonants. I think the general rule, muscles. I think the general rule is you want to move the hyphen to the left as much as possible, I think. So Malone, you could arguably write M-A-L hyphen O-N-E, but basically you want to move the hyphen as far to the left as makes sense. So yeah, sure, you could write mal-own, but you can still write ma-lone, but you can't write M alone, right? Alternate text, bar 16. So in vocal music, when we have one staff, like one group in the choir, in this case bass, when they are singing different text, you have to put the alternate text above the staff. This is where we can get the collisions. No, this isn't a collision. This is fine, but this is where the solution of moving the dynamics to the top in vocal music runs into problems, because it's going to collide with the alternate lyrics. In this case, it makes perfect sense. You've got the higher basses singing this eighth note line live, while the lower basses are holding this half note and then singing live. When I first saw this, I wondered, why not just give this line to the tenors? Because it's going, what is it, C, B flat, A flat, G, which would be written up here, right? Because this is an octave down. So they're like singing in thirds with these. I don't know, I wondered, this is kind of an orchestration thing, like a balance thing. I just wondered, why not give it to the tenors? There's probably a reason later, but it's a thought. The other thing is, anytime you divide a section, you might be making that section a lot quieter. So in my experience, my limited experience, some choirs don't have a lot of basses, but they might have a ton of tenors. So if you have 10 tenors and then 4 basses, and then you divide it and have half of the basses singing a high line, well, now you really only have 2 basses holding down the lowest end of the choir. So it's just something to be aware of, that there's more to it than just having extra notes. It's not a piano. You can wind up changing the orchestral balance of things by dividing. Just a thought. A thought that I imagine you've gone through and actually considered deeply. So that's not really feedback for you. It's feedback for people thinking about doing choral stuff. Moving on, flip B. Yeah. 36, flip B. Oh, yeah. I would just flip this B. No biggie. It's just because the slur or the tie is going through the stem. So why not flip it? It's not a big deal, but I think it would look nicer. Next note, bar 53. Oh, one other really minor thing that is actually not an issue. Okay, mezzo forte. What's everybody else doing? Everybody's mezzo piano. I guess they're probably still mezzo piano, and then the altos come in mezzo forte. So it's assumed. So everybody builds up to this forte, and they go down. This is up to the conductor or the choir director, or whatever you call it. But I guess the assumption is you go down one dynamic, right? So you go up to mezzo forte, up to forte, down to mezzo forte, up to forte, I guess, over 4 bars. What I'm saying is it can be helpful to have a target dynamic. It's not necessary. You don't need to have a target dynamic. You can just leave it to the choir and they'll figure it out, and it'll probably be fine. And in fact, it's probably micromanaging to ask for one, but it's just something to think about. Bar 53, 1, 2, 3, flipping. Oh yeah, I would just flip this. Again, and this isn't even like a collision or anything. It's just if these stems are up and these are up and these are up and this is in the middle, this is allowed to be up. Oh, wait, flip that too. Yeah. Point is, just flip it. I don't know. I think it'd look nicer. I don't like it when it's like the same note and it's written in 2 different ways, up and then down. It just looks weird. That is not a rule though. It's really no big deal. 66. Yeah, there was one this is probably the only a little bit slower. Quarter 98. 112. I guess that's a little bit. Is there an Italian word for a little slower? There probably is. Yeah, there's basically one typo in this thing. I don't even know if it's a typo, but you're missing. Yeah, you're missing lyrics for the bass. I mean, that's it. That's the only legitimate quote unquote typo in this entire piece. It's just that. I am assuming it's oohs, right? Ooh to match with these guys. So it's really not a big deal. What else? 77. Muscles, alive. 77. I wrote that there's a clash somewhere. Live, oh, this is not a huge deal. I was a little confused. Everybody's singing alive and then ending on, I've. And just the tenors are given this thing. Don't know. Because it means while everybody's still singing that I vowel, these guys are going I've and then ending on O. I don't know if maybe you wanted to give everybody the O thing, but it makes perfect sense. That is to say, it's really fine the way it is. And I have one more note, which is 82, which is the fermata. Yeah. Do you need a fermata on the final rest? I don't know. Why is there a fermata on the last rest? Cool. There was one other. What was the other thing? Nientes. If you want to, if I can remember to do it, I'll put it in the description. There's Tim, is it Tim Davies? Tim Davis? I think it's Tim Davies. He has a really cool blog post on dynamics and I believe he talks about nientes and how it can, and how niente gets interpreted by musicians, because while the idea is you fade into nothing, the effect is often people fading gradually and ending the note at a bunch of different times. So a big staggered ending, which you need to be aware of. I think it's even worse with starting with a niente, going from nothing into a dynamic. It just means it's going to be a staggered entrance. So just something to think about. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, really just this looks amazing. I think it's fantastic. Okay, so here we have a cool solo piano thing, and I think in this case I'm going to talk a lot about engraving. and not a lot about arrangement. For one, I'm not much of a piano player, so I don't know all the ins and outs of how to write a nice piano chart. So all the notes I made when I was looking at this are more or less 100% software related, I think. But the nice thing about this and about my feedback here is these are all generally really easy fixes, I think. Maybe a couple exceptions. Okay, so looks good, good size, totally legible. This looks like you print it off and it's easy to read. A couple things. Generally speaking, the first line of a piece should be indented a little bit. If you just look, like open up any piano book or book of music generally, you'll see the first line is indented, unless you're really hurting for space. And I think maybe some, I feel like I've seen parts, like music theater parts, without an indent. I don't personally think you need it actually, but it seems like a rule. Anyway, thing two, you don't need to have this every staff labeled piano. The player will remember what they're playing. Furthermore, if it's solo piano, I don't think you even need any staff labels. I think generally if this was in a book, it wouldn't say piano because it'd be a piano book. And if it was a part that is like an instrumental part of a larger piece, it would say piano up here in the corner. Okay, so getting rid of these piano labels. Also, I mean, if you did have them labeled every staff, you would probably abbreviate it to piano or something. But either way, you wouldn't label it. Now, I do say that that's a software thing. Like, I'm more or less certain this was not made in Sibelius Finale or Dorico or MuseScore. So I believe it was made in Notion. And for all I know, maybe the staff labels are just automatic and are really hard to remove. So that could be a bit of a hurdle to cleaning this up, and a hurdle when it comes to a couple of the other engraving things. Here's like a sneaky pro tip. A lot of the time when I can't do something in a program, like Dorico is very restrictive with certain things, I wind up masking things, like hiding things by just putting in a white box. I wonder if I can do that here. Perfect, right? So you could either do that in a PDF editor, or I do it like in the program in Dorico. But it's just a good way to erase things that are difficult to erase in whatever software you're using. Okay, moving on. Speaking of software issues, and the reason that I think that this was made in Notion is the music font is a little bit odd. For one, the staccato dots are very large. I wonder if there are any dotted notes in here. Yeah, okay, here. So I think they're the same size. They look the same. So here are some dotted notes. The dots are, well, this size. And I believe that staccato dots are supposed to be smaller than rhythm dots. I'll put up an example of that in a sec. But these really look to be the same size as the rhythm dots. If I'm wrong, I don't know. We'll see. So that's one music font thing. The other thing is these 16th notes. The beaming is like super wide. Like the distance from the top beam to the bottom beam is really, 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 really tall, which is just visually distracting just because it jumps out at you and looks kind of weird. It just looks unusual. But then the other effect you get sometimes is you can see the staff lines in between the beams, and sometimes that's fine. And other times it just is very jarring. I wonder if I, like here, and yeah, like this, it just adds to this visual clutter that's pretty darn distracting. More music font weirdness. Where was it? Some of the like articulation marks are super strange. So the accents, the accent is this very cool futuristic looking thing. It looks kind of fun actually, but it's asymmetrical. It's heavier on the top than on the bottom, except over here it's flipped. It's heavier on the bottom than on the top. I don't know why. At first I see it's flipped here too. And at first I thought, okay, well, if it stems up, maybe it's the heavy side up, and stems down, heavy side down. But here it's heavy down, stems up. No idea what that's about. So I don't want to just offer a bunch of problems with your music font, especially if you're stuck with the program that you have, because music programs are super expensive, except for MuseScore. So you can't just up and buy Sibelius because you want to improve your engraving. That's not a good solution. I would suggest seeing what other fonts are compatible with the program you're using and going from there. I assume there are other fonts available for Notion, but I haven't looked that up. Because otherwise you're following all the rules, and you've even got some cool cross staff beaming here, which is really nicely done, really cool. So it's just, I feel like you're kind of hamstrung by the software that you're using, which I hate saying that because I don't know, people argue about software all the time. It's super annoying, and I try not to do that. Okay, but moving on. What other cool things can we talk about with this cross staff beaming? Very cool. Interesting, because here we're okay. Little note. I was gonna say this is cool. We've got two bass clefs because you're playing a bunch of low notes, but you still want to show the hand division. You should have a cautionary clef at the end of this line because we're switching clefs here. I also wonder if this clef should go before the bar line. Probably not. That's probably, yeah, no, this is probably fine. Yeah, you should definitely have a small bass clef right there just to warn the player that we're switching. Okay. Also, I wonder if you even need that. Like, how many ledger lines below the staff can you read on treble clef comfortably? Because this goes down to E flat, and then we're back up, and then back right down. Oh, it goes down to A. Oh, no. Yeah. No, C. Okay, so that's very low. So we do want a bass clef. Anyway, so cool. We've got cross staff writing in both hands are in the bass clef. So this is just showing you how to divide your hand up. One interesting thing with this kind of beaming is something happens. How can I describe this? So see how these 16ths are all evenly spaced, and you can see the stems are like more or less evenly dividing these beams. If we look over here, we have this tiny space here and a big space and then a bigger space. So there's this weird kind of uneven thing that just makes the beaming kind of awkward to read. It just looks odd, and there's a kind of a funny thing, a funny reason for that. I was running into this because when I was using Dorico, I was getting the exact same results, entering 4/16 and then having them switch staves, and looking really weird. And the reason for that is kind of fun. The note heads are evenly spaced, but because the stems are on different sides of the note heads, it looks like they're uneven. So I'm going to draw some lines here. So if these stems were on the same side of the note head, you would actually wind up with even spacing, right? But they're not, and obviously we're not going to write these notes backwards. That would be dumb. So what you can do is you can actually, now I can't do this because it's a PDF, but if you actually drag this note and this note to the right a little bit, the note heads will be uneven, but the stems will be even, and even though the note heads are uneven, it will look balanced. I think that's just kind of a cool, weird quirk. You actually make the distance between the notes uneven and weird, and you wind up with a nicer looking set of 16ths. Okay, what else? Oh, so I'm just looking at my notes here. I think this looks fine, but normally I see Composer on the right-hand side. Just a thought. But nice font. Looks good. Tempo marking. Oh, yeah. Quarter equals 150. Of course, that's perfectly fine. Normally, you would say presto, quarter note equals 150, or whatever. I've said this before. So it's you give the usually Italian speed, or these days you can just give it in English. It doesn't matter. Just go very fast, quarter 150, or you give a little mood indication. You could say fleetingly. I don't know, something flighty, right? Okay, hairpins don't align. Oh yeah, I mean, and this is more typical stuff that is kind of hard for everybody to keep track of. It's generally a good idea for your hairpins to align. It's very obvious here, It's kind of weird to me that the opening of this one isn't even the same size as the opening of this one, because these look more or less in line. Kind of weird. And then the other thing is, it's a little unclear if this hairpin, see how it's open at the end? That usually means that it's going to extend here. So I'm assuming that this decrescendo is going from here all the way here to the MP, I think. But there's something about it that looks weird, and to me it looks odd that it's intersecting the bar line here. I would have cut it there, or maybe put it further over or something. It just looks kind of weird. And I bet that comes up later, because hairpins are tricky. Yeah, here. Yeah, it's just something you could just drag this one down or drag this one up a little bit, and that would be fine. And weirdly, these openings look the same size, so I don't know what that's about. Yeah, it's just a really common thing. There was something else. Yeah, okay. So the left hand is staccato all the way for quite a while. Stack, stack, stack. Stack all the way, I would call it, to here. You could write them all staccato, or you could do like 2 bars and then write sim or semper stack or something. Stack semper. Sempre, S-E-M-P-R-E, which just means always. So like always staccato. And then, but I forget how you cancel that. So with some things you cancel it by writing ord, like O-R-D, period. Or you could cancel it by writing legato. Something to think about. It would just save you some visual clutter. Is that everything I had for this? Oh man. And then minor note, like minor. You don't really need the up arrow on an upwards arpeggio. It's kind of implied. I know a lot of sheet music has it, so it's totally fine. But if you only really need an arrow when it's a downwards arpeggio, it's kind of a given if you just see the line that you're going to arp it up. That and the P here is kind of colliding with the stem. Do you need to stem this together? Also, wait a minute. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This makes sense hand-wise. Like I get why you would include these in this staff. I feel like you could have put this what is 5 ledger lines down? B? So this is here? Yeah, I think you could at least put the B there. Maybe I don't know. This is where my lack of piano skills comes into the foreground. Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess in summary, most of there's good news and bad news. There are some interesting engraving issues, like we talked about the beams, and some of the articulation marks are weird, and then the piano labeling. So the annoying thing is those are all software headaches. But the good news is those aren't like quote unquote engraving issues that are your fault, right? Like they're easy fixes. They're not, you don't have to learn anything new in order to make these fixes. You just have to do technical stuff. So I don't know. That's my good news, bad news take on that. Okay, cool. Good job, Zach Parks. Nice song. Very cool. Okay, so this is kind of exciting. Looking at basically a full-on orchestra tune from one Sergio Gómez. Apologies for the pronunciation. And I have had a look at this and I've made a couple of notes, but I'm basically just reading through this and blabbing about. I'm kind of just flagging things. Like a lot of the comments that I'm going to make aren't necessarily hard and fast rules. They're just things that you might want to think about if you were preparing this for musicians, or if you were submitting it to a contest, a competition rather. Because on the whole, it looks great. It's totally legible. I mean, I wonder, I didn't get parts from anybody, like instrumental parts, but on the whole, the scores look fantastic. Everybody's doing great. So most of the things that I'm going to bring up are very, often very minor, like nitpicky details, or they're going to be suggestions or things to watch out for. If you want to talk nitpicky, let's see. I will zoom in at some point. So If this were being printed, it's easiest for the conductor, who's going to be looking at 2 pages in front of them, it's easiest to read if the staves are lined up with each other. On the first page, it doesn't matter because it's a title. But if we go to the next set of pages, well, actually, on the first page is usually like page 1 of the score is usually on the right-hand side. So then there's a page turn and you get page 2 and 3, not page 1 on the left. You know what I mean? So if we look at this, when we're reading across, all the woodwinds are more or less in line with each other. But as we go down, well, look at this. The basses are up here, and then down here, they're actually in line with the cellos. So, and that's obviously because the music on this page is taking up more vertical space, so it's getting bumped down. But, and this is a software thing. Ideally, the software would just, I think you call it justify it, like vertically justify all the staves. Because you want your eyes to just flow from the left page to the right page and not get confused if you were following, if you're following the viola line, straight across, and now you're on violin 2. Not a crazy deal breaker, and it's actually, it's really not that bad on this page. But it's something to be aware of. This is the bigger. Oh, but that's not a big deal because it's page 1. Okay. Thing 2. This is a gentle suggestion. It's just something to be aware of. If we look, I'll zoom in here. So this is the top of the tune, and we're giving different dynamics to different instruments. You can do this. I'm not a pro orchestrator, but it's just something to be aware of. Generally speaking, you want to give everybody the same dynamic. Unless you're going for a very specific balance between instruments, it's easiest, they'll balance themselves, right? Even though hypothetically flute is louder than clarinet. I don't know if that's actually true, but let's say flute is louder than clarinet and you want them to be balanced. So you say, aha, well, I'm going to outsmart them and I'm going to write the flute piano and the clarinet mezzo piano. Aha. You don't have to do that. You can just write mezzo piano across the board and the instruments, the musicians themselves will balance it. And if they don't, the conductor will balance it. So, but for all I know, you may have a brilliant plan and you might absolutely know, okay, no, you want piano in the flutes, mezzo piano in the oboes, mezzo forte in the cor anglais, different for every instrument. If we go down, let's see, is it the same? This is one thing. Oops. The harp only needs one dynamic. You don't need mezzo piano in both staves. You're giving viola MP. Well, yeah. Another thing, and as I said, I'm just reading through this and kind of improvising here. We're doing it live. This looks like you probably copy pasted the viola from something, because this is obviously an error, right? MP, G crescendo, MP. But why was this error made? What is that, a C? C, F. Okay. So the thing is, this is my editor brain. I go up here and I look for somebody that's going CF that's playing MP. So you maybe you copied the oboes, right? And then pasted it down in the viola, which is absolutely fine. Yeah, it looks like that's what you did. Because that's generally how you orchestrate something on the computer. You write melodies in certain instruments and then you fill it out by copying and pasting it into the other instruments. It's totally legit. But if you do that, you have to be very careful that what you're doing is making sense. Cool. Actually, on that note, another thing that can arise is range issues. So, what is the lowest note that a violin can play? It's a G. So it's a G below middle C on the treble clef. And what do we have here? We have an E. So while the chord might make sense. And if your notation program is playing back those notes, it probably sounds great. But unfortunately, you're going to have some sad violin players, right? So once again, you could go up here and look and go, okay, you copied from somebody, right? One of these guys, which again is fine, but you would just want to flip it up the octave. Likewise, English horn, cor anglais, might not go that low. My general rule, because I don't have the range of every single instrument memorized, my general rule is if I see a lot of ledger lines, I look it up. I go, this seems like a lot, because basically every instrument is written. Of course, this is a, sounding pitch score. It's a concert. I don't even know what you call it. Everything is written as it sounds. You will see a lot of ledger lines, but it's just something to be aware of. So I found a website. Let's see here. I'll paste it in the description. That is just a big old list of instrument ranges. This is very useful. This is the kind of thing you would want to maybe print out and just have next to your computer. So let's look. And this is also useful because it's in concert. Like it's not how the player would read it. It's how it sounds. So cor anglais. And can I zoom in? Yeah. Okay. Cor anglais. The lowest note is this E, and the highest note is this A. But this is another orchestration thing. Just because an instrument can play a low E and a high A, that doesn't mean that you would want to write those notes. They might sound kind of weird, or they might not be able to play their lowest note at a very quiet dynamic, or their highest note at a very quiet dynamic. Some instruments, it doesn't matter. Violin, strings generally, you can pretty much play whatever, wherever, and it sounds, a violin sounds like a violin wherever you play it. But woodwinds, they have different registers, I guess you could call them, or different ranges. So here, this is very helpful. We have most effective range, I guess meaning just those notes sound the nicest, or maybe they're easiest to play. Then here we have practical range. And then here we have the actual range. Sometimes you'll see stuff like, this is the professional range, like a highly skilled player can play that. If we look further on this website, we have even better descriptions here. For bassoon, we've got our range, and they've described it as most reliable range, and then some other cool words like power, piercing and harsh. Maybe you want that. Mellow and delicate. Cool. And then same with clarinet. Clarinet has a whole other thing where it's like hard to play between registers. So the point is, at the most basic level, it's very useful to at least know what's physically possible on the instrument. So for our English horn, it turns out, yes, you can play this low E, but it is the lowest note on the instrument, and who knows, maybe that's hard to play, especially at the beginning of the song. I don't know. Okay, so that's ranges. The main issue being that we have this a couple impossible notes. Well, just the one really, the E on this violin. Okay, what else? Harp. This is, I was telling people I would give them like engraving advice, but this is mostly orchestration stuff. But what can you do? I mean, it generally looks good, engraving wise. Maybe it's a little cramped, I don't know. So, harp stuff. Whether or not these kind of chords in both hands are like idiomatic, I'm not so sure if they are, and I don't really care too much about that. But just a fun thing to note. Here we have these arpeggio signs with a little arrow. And you know what that sounds like, right? Bloom. I have read that harpists generally will play a chord. They'll arpeggiate chords by default, right? So actually, if a harp player was just sitting down and saw this music, they would probably go bloop, bloop, bloop. They would arpeggiate every chord. like a little, like a tasteful amount, right? To the point where if you don't want these arpeggiated, you should actually draw a little line, a little like square line. I'll put a picture up. So that's just a little harp thing. That and the you don't need that second dynamic. What else? There was something about the tempo. We have a tempo given in bar 2. You probably want to give that in bar 1. And also, this is one part of the song where you can kind of break some rules. This is where you want to write maybe an emotional word, expressive. Or you could do a traditional one, like you could go andante, allegro. Or you can go like with anguish or majestically. It's just something. So the conductor and all the players look at it, and for the first time they read it, they at least have some idea of how they're going to play. Just something to think about. At the very least, give them the Italian tempo, right? Why shouldn't it be on bar 2? Normally it's at the beginning. There is only one person playing, and that's the timpanist, who's doing kind of a drum roll. The only reason I can think of for having this tempo here is if this note had a fermata. There's my... I can draw. Hang on. It just looks really bad if I do. Like, also this wouldn't be here. And this would go, like, under the note. So, having just a held drum roll, that would be a good reason for having the tempo on bar 2. Otherwise, I would just put it here. That's fine, especially if there's no fermata. What else? Oh, yeah. A lot of people, a lot of nerds on the internet that I talk to, they say just write these out. If like, okay, I play bass, so this is very easy for string players to read. It's totally unambiguous. It's, ba 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 da ga da ga da ga da da, right? These are just 16th notes, and it's like a shorthand. You don't really need to use this shorthand. This is kind of just an old-fashioned-ish thing to save ink and to save paper. You can just write it out. No biggie. But on the other hand, it's easy enough to read. It's fine. I think it actually looks kind of cool. The thing that I am slightly concerned about is putting it in drum notation. I'm not a drummer, and I don't know enough about drum notation to speak really confidently, but drum rolls are notated with 3 strokes, right? So I just wonder, especially maybe if this is for like a high school band or something, I wonder if the percussionists are going to get confused seeing drum rolls and then seeing this. And because this, if I was reading it, it's yaga daga daga da, right? But like furthermore, if you're writing it this way, you could have done that here. You could have written 8th quarter note with the 2 slashes, right? Because this is da da ga da ga da da ga da ga da ga da ga da ga da. I don't know. Just kind of something to think about. If you're writing this out in full, may as well write this out in full. Okay, what else? I mean, honestly, like, pretty decent looking score. Oh, there's one other thing. What was it? Right. Big one. If we look over here, plural, right? Plural. Singular? Also English? Shouldn't this be like cornness? I don't know. So plural, it's assumed that it's 2, 2, 1. Oh, this is not plural. Oops. It's assumed it's 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, I guess. Obviously 2, 2, 2, 2. You need to write that up here, right? You need to, indicate whether this is one player or two players. Here it's obvious because we have this double stemmed writing and then the different voices. Here it is not obvious. So it should say A2, 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 A2. Or just one, like the other way of notating it would be, if it's just one player, you would write, one dot, right? Or that's if it's flute 1. If it's flute 2, you'd write 2 dot. Just something to be aware of. And then the last thing about writing like divided stuff is let's see here. So this is perfect. It's the reason that we're going stems down, stems up is because in this bar here, the two players have different rhythms. This would be confusing if this is written, stems up like that, because then how long would this note be? It would be a little hard to read. You might, is it an 8th rest? By the way, it's very hard to draw with a trackball. I don't know if whatever. So this makes perfect sense. However, here, let's see. I would, These are almost playing the same rhythm except for this bar. So, and here it's written as 1. So if it was me, I would flip all of these stems up. For one, it saves a lot of space, and then I would flip them down here. I think that's what I do. Yeah, I don't know. There was a better example of that. Yeah, there's just on the subsequent pages and the horns. These are all the same rhythm. Yeah, all this. Okay, these ones aren't. So since this line is all one rhythm, just do everything stems up. You save a lot of vertical space. Same with this. Interesting. Let's see, what else? Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, these pages. So, this is exactly what I should have been talking about. So here, these could all be stems up, stems up, stems up, up. Yeah. So I forget what you call that, if it's consolidating stems or whatever, but it would save a lot of room. And I find that this page looks cluttered because of the stems going up and down. And then one other thing is you don't need, even if you were doing stems up and stems down, I think you wouldn't need both of these rests. You can just delete one of them or hide one of them, depending on what software you're using. Hide one, pop the other back into the middle of the staff, and it'll look a lot cleaner. These dynamics should start, like this should be here, right? Because you don't want a dynamic under a rest. Doesn't really make sense. The last thing that I wanted to just flag was the horns. French horns. Maybe I'm just covering my ass here, and I should just admit that I'm not an orchestrator, but whatever. You should read about French horn writing, because I noticed you've done the cool thing here, which is French horns, or sorry, also it should just be horn, because they're horn, horn in F, whatever. You've done horn 1 and 3 and 2 and 4. A lot of scores do horn 1 and 2, 3 and 4. But there's something special about 1 and 3. French horns, in a typical 4-horn section, horn 1 and 3 do the highest notes of the chord, and 2 and 4 do the lower notes. You would think it would go like 1, 2, high to low, 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's actually 1, 3, 2, 4, right? So horns 1 and 3 do high notes. Okay. Also, they don't. It's not like they sit beside each other. They sit in a line 1, 2, 3, 4. So having said that, the reason you might want to notate 1 and 3 is because typically, oh gosh, can I write a chord in here? Let's see. Let's say you had a F major chord. You would write it like this. like this. There's 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, right? If it's, because this is 1 and 3, and this is 2 and 4. Okay, it's just easier to read because they're closer on the staff, I guess. If we were doing like horns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, the same chord would be written like this, right? So you see these fifths instead of the thirds. I'm sure there are also other reasons for writing it like that, but it's just something to be aware of. So it made me wonder, okay, well, how are you writing your horn chords? And in some places, they make perfect sense, and some they don't. So here, if we look, what is this? F-A-D-F. If this were written normally, horn 1 would be on F. Horn 3. Oh, no, this is right. This is right. Okay, yeah. This is 1 and 3, because these guys do the high notes, and then this is 2 and 4, right? Because they're specialized at the low notes. But if we look over here, yeah. Right, so horn 1 gets the highest note. But the next note in this chord is actually here, right? So you're giving horn 2 the next highest note in the chord. This note should really belong to horn 3, right? It should be written there. Okay, we get rid of that. Oh, now that I crossed it out, I don't know where it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this player should actually be playing this note, right? 2, 4. This is 1 and 3, right? And that probably applies to this whole passage. Yes, it does. So basically, even though you have the horns laid out as 1, 3, 2, 4, which is cool, you've orchestrated the chord, like you've written the chord as if this was horn 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Does that make sense? I know I just threw a bunch of stuff at you. Moral of the story with all my advice is look up horn writing. I'm gonna look up horn writing now because there's so much to learn. Okay, I hope that provided some helpful feedback. Otherwise, I mean, it's generally really, really good. No catastrophic engraving issues. I mean, this should be joined, like, whatever. No. Yeah, great stuff. Congratulations. Okay. Guitar. So, classical guitar notation, well, all guitar notation is, I would say, a lot more complicated than people think. It's almost like trying to write piano on one staff with both hands, because you've got your thumb playing bass notes, which is its own voice, sort of, and then you've got your fingers playing a melody. But then simultaneously you can have other fingers playing kind of inside voices, which means you often have 3 voices going on at once. And that's pretty easy to do by hand, like with a pen and paper, and often just a real headache in software. So, but this looks great. This is just kind of a professional looking piece of sheet music. So much like a lot of these, the feedback I give is going to be very nitpicky and minor. And actually, I found the nitpickiest one. Two extreme nitpicks. So on the whole, this thing looks amazing. I think it looks professional. I'm not being hyperbolic. The nitpicky things. So I did talk briefly with Jerremiah Smith, just to ask him if he had like an XML file or MIDI file, and he said no, and he mentioned that he made it in Finale, which of course is a totally professional engraving tool. But I noticed the copyright here, 2006. Now I've never used Finale, but 2006 is a long time ago. Now maybe he wrote this in 2006 and then put it in the computer like last year, so I could be way off. But if he was writing in Finale in 2006, I bet there were some technical hurdles that he had to overcome to make this look as good as it does. I know Sibelius from 2006 was, it didn't have all the features that it does now. So here are the ridiculous nitpicks. Can you spot anything weird about this Poco writ? Anything? Let's zoom way in. So you might not see that at first glance, but I don't know, if you're used to proofreading stuff, it jumps out right away, which is the hook at the end of this writ it looks like it was added manually. I assume it was added manually because it doesn't line up with the dashes. It's higher than the dashes. So it just looks a little bit weird even from a distance. If you printed it out, it just kind of looks funny. And then the same thing happens with this writ, but in a different way. Oops, sorry everybody. Which is the hook actually, like the dash was probably ended, automatically in finale, and then this was added manually. So not only do we have a very, very, very tiny dash, which just looks kind of funny, but if you look really closely, the hook is lower this time than the line of the dash. You wanted nitpicky, right? So that's that. The other crazy nitpick is, believe it or not, the coda here is slightly higher than this line, which means I assume this is also done manually. Can I draw a line in here? Let's see. That's too thick. Well, you can actually still see though. It's clearly. Anyway, if we zoom way in, what's the best way to show this? Like if you just keep scrolling down, let's see. Can I do it, or will it move? Yeah, okay. So here the top line is getting cut in half by the top of this window, and here it's not even being touched. So I know we're talking about pixels basically, but I did notice it just at this distance. I just kind of went, the code is like sitting in a weird place. Like what? And then I was kind of thinking, like, is it some spacing thing with this, or is it this line that's throwing me off? And you zoom in, and you go, oh, what? Oh, it's slightly higher. Anyway, so that's the nitpick out of the way. I will say one thing. I'm not sure I'm used to seeing bar numbers at the beginning of a coda like this when it's on the same, sort of in the same system as the last line of the song. This tune has bar numbers at the beginning of every system. I don't know what the protocol is. Like, do you even need to give a bar number on a coda? Like, you would never get lost if your teacher says, play the coda. You wouldn't have to count bars to do that. You would just go to the coda, right? So even if, I don't know, it just kind of threw me off. Anyway, that's one thing. Now let's see notes. One of the more confusing or difficult things with guitar notation is dealing with voices and trying to accurately convey what's being played, how long is every note getting held, etc., etc. In a bar like this pickup, it's just really obvious. You play bump, bump, no biggie. Where's another example? In this bar here, this is also very obvious. You're playing the low E, and then you're holding it for the whole bar, and while that's playing, your fingers play this little melody. Okay, so what happens when we have three different voices? So this bar is a very clear example. We have a low A that's dotted and being held for the whole bar. On top here, we have the E. We're in 3/4, by the way. So we have E for 2 beats, and then another E. And then underneath, it's really obvious. 8th rest, 8th note, 8th, 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 8th. So everything adds up. Everything is getting notated. Sometimes, not everything gets notated. And it's hard to even know what to do. So in this bar, and we'll talk about this bar later. In this bar, it's very clear. Got the F sharp getting held for the whole bar. We've got this melody here, A. Here we have a rest, and then 8th, 8th, 8th. And this is kind of the question mark. It's easy enough to read. I think this actually gives enough info. But the question is, does this need a quarter rest there to indicate that you're not, say, holding onto that note? Or should these notes be flipped? Are these notes kind of considered part of the melody? Maybe they aren't. Maybe they're like an accompaniment pattern and the melody is really just dun, 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 like that. Kind of hard to say. Same with this bar, same with this bar. So while I can't really give it like a definitive answer about this, it's sort of apparent, unless the composer knows something that I don't, which is probably the case, because I do play a bit of guitar, but I wouldn't call myself a guitarist. Here we have, in the middle voice, we have this eighth rest, bunch of eighths, and then no rest. And then here we have the same thing, eighth rest, eighth notes, no rest. And the melody is the same, or the high notes, half note, eighths, and the lowest note is the same. But we have this rest floating up here, doing nothing, because it's 1, 2, 3, and. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, and. I don't know if Finale was getting confused with the voices and really wanted to put this rest up here. No. I bet what it is like, well, if it was Sibelius or Dorico, it's probably like this is a voice, 1, 2, 3, and then this is a voice, 1 and 2 and 3 and. So yeah, sometimes the rests and voices and stuff can be pretty darn tricky. Sometimes it's really clear, sometimes it isn't. The other thing is, while bars like this are very clear because you have a dotted half rest in one voice, and then up here you've got a half note and then a quarter note, and they're, aligned properly on the rhythmic grid, and then in the middle voice we've got rests. Sometimes you don't even need the rests, right? There are lots of instances of multiple voice writing in piano or drums where rests clutter things up, and it's kind of implicit that you don't need them, like in crossed staff writing, for instance. So yeah, all that is to say, bars like this one where we're missing this rest, this really wouldn't interfere with the legibility or the playability of the part. It's just, there's just a lot to think about. The fact that these are upstemmed and these are downstemmed. Anyway, I'm looking at this bar here. There's a lot going on. We've got a writ, we've got some notes, right, in 3 voices. Got a fermata and a coda. I feel like you could save some space by eliminating the writ line, because really we're in one bar, you've got a writ and then a fermata. I think it's very implied that you're going to slow down all the way to the fermata. So I don't know. I think this line is overkill. You might not even need it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. However, one thing I don't think I'm wrong about is what is going on in this bar. So this is an empty bar. We need something here, and it's not easily resolved, because I think I get why you've written it like this. Because does the song start like that? Oh, it doesn't. Weird. Well, because it's a pickup, right? It's like a pickup to this repeated section, mirroring this here, right? Once we're playing this section, it's very easy. Play this thing, bump, bump, back to the top, much like it was here. The thing is, you really can't have an empty bar like this. I don't think. So I was trying to think of how you could notate this, and my thought was, I'm going to do some bad drawing here. So that's my thought. Now I'm not sure if this fermata goes like that or whatever, but that would be one way around it. Oh, but okay, couple things. Anyway, this is what you would need for this bar to make sense, I think. I imagine so you've got this bar, play, holding the note, and moving on, right? For a variety of reasons, I'm not sure if this fermata should go here or here. I'm leaning towards here with a tied half note. Makes this bar make sense, and it doesn't interfere with the coda, because I'm a little unclear as to, well, maybe it's perfectly clear. Maybe I'm just being a moron here, but keep in mind that this fermata is going to be played and held before entering the coda. So if that's intentional, then great. If not, if you move the fermata over, but then can you have a tied note going into a coda? I have so many questions. Yeah, don't know. I mean, you could maybe write a note that says tied first time only or something, like a little asterisk. What else? Like you could do bar of 1/4. Oh, but then you need to put this back here. 3/4. I cared about this one. This is not so good. Yeah, The thing is, I don't think you should have this weird empty bar. That's all. Just flagging. Oh, one obvious solution is just don't use this repeat structure. Just write it all out. But I like saving paper. We want to be environmentally aware. Even then, would that actually help? Yeah, that could, because then you could actually do the tied note over without worrying about that confusing the coda structure. Yeah, you could just write it out. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what other people would do. What else? There's something kind of cool about guitar writing, which you've done really well, and that is sometimes you want to write, like you want to notate what string something's being played on, like you do that down here. And sometimes you want to write what finger you should use, what left-hand finger you should use. But sometimes that can lead to over-notating things. And in this case, like this is a great example of how to not over-notate something. This E to F sharp, we actually, because you've given us the fingers, we basically know what strings it has to be played on. It's obviously not the open E string, because you can't fret the open E string. But furthermore, this is a pretty big hint that these two notes are on separate strings. I could be totally, like this could be 9th fret on the G string, and then whatever that is on the next string. What? Oh God, thinking 7th fret on the 2nd string, which works with the barring. Anyway, the point is you're kind of killing two birds with one stone here by giving us left-hand fingering. It's also telling us what string to use implicitly. Very cool. There are a couple of collisions here that you could fix just because they're really simple. This sliding notation looks like it was done manually in some, like just by dragging things around, this is a line or something. Anyway, something looks a little weird about that. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that this slide it's not like, don't think like tab for all you other guitar composers. It's not like sliding into a note like audibly. This is just telling you to shift your finger up to play with the 4th finger. The one other thing, maybe a couple other things. This seems like a choice. Are there any other instances? Like this, having this downstem beam thing and then this flag up here going up, seems like a choice that you abandoned. Like it's here in the first complete bar, it's here, and then not here. So I'm not sure what this is telling us, if this is a melody or what. Does it show up anywhere else? Maybe not. And then the other thing that is tricky is these rests, because sometimes they can collide with like this. This is not the most attractive. I dug through some of my guitar books and found, I'll put the pictures up in a sec. I found these rests, like specifically this almost exact example here, with the quarter rest just nudged over a bit because it was a passage with like a C, but the bass note was an F or something. So it would be impossible to get the quarter rest in there. So it was just nudged over a bit. The other thing I wondered about is if these dots should be vertically lined up. I don't know. I have no idea, but it's a thought. Yeah, I will say something about having a dot on a line like that is also a little bit odd. Maybe that was dragged manually, because I think the general rule with dotted rhythms is the dots can't, like they have to be in a space, right? You can't have a dot on a line. So I imagine that applies to rests too. So I would in this case, I would nudge it up a bit. I also wonder if you could grab it and like scale the rest down just a little bit in whatever software you're using. That's another sneaky solution. I don't know. What else? I think that was it. The point is, I keep saying this is a very nice looking piece of music. It's very legible and it's a cool tune. I'll spare you me playing it, but I did kind of run through everything, and it's a very pretty song. It's cool. So good job, and very cool to offer it on your website as a free sample of your work. I think that's really neat. And also all the more reason to, if you have the file, tidy it up just a tiny bit, because it's basically like a business card when you're offering something for free. Yeah. Anyway, really fantastic. I didn't talk a lot about the barring letters, the C2, C7 thing. That just means bar for this duration, and it's telling you the fret. And then there's this thing, which is like, I believe this is bar half of the neck on the 5th fret. The other thing is with right hand harmonics. Like I know exactly what you're asking here. It's like the artificial right hand tappy harmonic thing. Again, I wish I had a webcam because I'm miming it. Usually, well, for me anyway, like all bets are off when it comes to harmonic notation. It makes me lose my mind. It's really confusing. I've seen diamond note heads for harmonics combined with like the small note an octave above. Anyway, blah blah blah. Like, do you need 8VA? You know? I don't know. I don't know. There are a lot of ways. In my experience, there is no unified way of doing it. Kind of like drum notation. There's no absolute rule about harmonic notation, I think. That's a hot take. Okay, but yeah, really professional looking work. Love it. Okay. Let's see here. So Tony here was cool enough to provide me with a Muse score file, which, if nothing else, at least you can hear some of the audio if we want to listen to something. But this video isn't really about how the music sounds, it's kind of about how it looks. The important stuff. So let's talk about that. The other thing is if I receive Muse score or Sibelius or Dorico or just XML, then I can manipulate it instead of just drawing crappily in my PDF viewer. So here we have another piano piece, and on the whole, it looks really cool. And one of the cool things about reading music that's not on your main instrument is you see things that you don't normally see or wouldn't even think to write. Like, for instance, this whole song is in 2 bass staves, or it's all in the bass, which is kind of cool. If I was asked to write a piano piece, I wouldn't even think to do that. It's just not like on my radar. So kind of cool, and it totally works sonically. You'd think it would sound really muddy, but actually the nature of the piece, it totally works. Okay, so let's talk about engraving. I guess the first thing would be thinking about page turns, which actually for the most part are all very doable because of the pedaling that's going on here. So normally when you're looking for good page turns, you would look for like a bar of rest, a couple of bars of rest, or, well, if it's like an orchestral part, or at least like a rest on beat 4 or whatever to give you time to reach up to turn the page. In this case, this is perfect because for one, we're pedaling, and the right hand doesn't need to hold that down. So while you're playing this thing here, you can move your right hand up and turn the page. And the same is true here, more or less. You could play this chord and then turn the page and remember to play that. Good page turn here, because we have these 2 chords punctuated by rests. It's very easy. And another good page turn here. Now, so that's that taken care of. The only issue is we've got this extra, just 3 bars on the last page, which makes me wonder if we could squeeze them in, or if we could stretch everything out so it's, 6 pages? Yeah, no. So it's 5 pages, but more evenly spaced. I'm not sure where I would begin that. Like, you might end the first page there or something, but then you'd probably run into other things. So it's kind of like a thing to be aware of. Another thing to be aware of, generally, you don't necessarily need the copyright info on every page. You can, and it's not like you're breaking a rule, but I like it just on the first page, and then you're not cluttering it up. So that's the simple stuff out of the way. I'm just gonna jump in and out of little pieces here. So this is a divisive thing. Subito P. I like P sub. For one thing, if the music was more complicated, when you have subito P like this, sometimes it's unclear. Well, with either, it's unclear where the dynamic is falling rhythmically. Yeah, like if it was, here. The composer might be trying to tell you that on beat whatever this is, beat 3, that it's piano right there. But some people might start reading it here, right? They might go, oh, it's subito P because the sub thing is falling on this note here. So let me undo a bunch of stuff. So to me, that's a little unclear. I mean, in this case, neither the P nor the subito falls on a beat. So it's odd to me. I wonder, how do I do this? I do this. I forget if there's a space in there, but whatever. See, I like that. Is there a space? I feel like there's a space. Regardless, I prefer that because it looks cleaner, and your eyes, some people say, oh, well, subito means suddenly, and you need to see that before you see the dynamic, so you know you're suddenly switching to the dynamic. But I really think your eyes kind of fall on this immediately, and you go P sub, and you play it. It's not like it's, I don't know, your eyes don't move that slowly. So that's my take on that. You could also, like, regardless of how you're, of whatever your preference is, I think sub P also works. I don't think you need to write out subito in full. Anyway, speaking, let's just go over here. Let's go over here. This is a rule that I'm not sure how this works. I find this a little weird. You've got this, these half notes, and it's pedaled over the rests. So again, not a keyboard player, but to me, rests imply silence, and in this case, that's not what's happening. So you might tie this or dot it or do something, or not. Maybe there's some piano rule about that, but to me, it just seems a little odd. Furthermore, or regarding the pedaling, I'm not a huge MuseScore user, so I thought that you were like using erroneous lines on this pedal indication, but it turns out this means it's invisible. That's why it's gray. So if anybody doesn't know that already, because you can either go like ped and then a line to where the pedaling is finished, or just ped and then nothing and then the little star shape when you're done pedaling. Anyway, that's that. So, fun fact that I found, and this is only, we can only look at this because this user submitted a MuseScore file. I wanted to see what music fonts were available, because there's something cool with MuseScore, which is you can use Bravura, which is an attractive font, in my opinion. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're currently on Emmentaler, and we're going to switch to Bravura. Subtle difference, but it's fine. But then I noticed something weird, which I believe is a MuseScore issue when using Bravura. Look at this. The fortissimo here, the FF, we have the very attractive, joined Fs. But look at the SFF. They're split. And there's no way to, move, well, I don't think there's a way to move one over. But if we go, can I come in? Yeah. But Emmentaler doesn't actually do the pretty joined crossing of the F thing. So, I don't know. I think it's just an SFF issue. Yeah, weird. I wonder if it's the same with like SFFF. FFF works. Whoa, weird. So, I don't know what you call that, Sforzandissimo, but SFFZ works, but SFF doesn't. I don't know, just fun fact, but you're all a bunch of nerds, so I'm sure you appreciate that. Okay, moving on from there. As a general thing, this is cool. We start in 4/4 or common time, and then we switch to 12/8 for the cool triplety thing, which all works. It's all nicely laid out, and the rest grouping is correct, and the beaming is all correct. And then, by the way, just like musically, I love this so much. I kind of wish that this duplet thing showed up more in the piece, although then you might get tired of it, but it's just very like dramatic, very cool. And it shows up there too. Yeah, so I just wanted to flag that as a thing that I really enjoyed. Oh, it actually shows up all over the place. You probably used it a tasteful amount. I wonder if you could flip that. How do I flip? Yeah, I might flip that just to keep the vertical spacing nice. So here's the issue that I had with the 12/8 versus the 4/4. We switched back to 4/4, but we're still playing predominantly triplets. So to me, I feel like you could just carry on writing in 12. There's really nothing here, like these would be dotted quarters, and then this would just, you would just remove the triplets on everything. It would be, I mean, sometimes it's actually a real pain to switch in software from 4/4 to 12 and vice versa. But to me, yeah, this just, I couldn't really think of an explanation as to why you would switch to 4/4 and then carry on playing triplets. And then, of course, we switch back to 12 and it's all cleaner. La-di-da. The end makes sense. This makes sense in 4 because we got a couple triplets. I don't know. Maybe there's some theory thing that I'm missing, but to me, just didn't really get why that middle section was in 4. Okay, next thing, these chords here, I feel like this could be written a little more cleanly. It looks like this is written in with one voice, which is why these guys aren't whole notes. They're tied half notes. If you were just reading this as a piano player, it would probably be really simple. You just read it down, no big deal. But I think it might look better and be perfectly correct if we just kind of messed with this a little bit. Oh, these are different voice. Yeah, okay. So let's see here. We're gonna make this, I don't know, voice 3. And then we are going to take these. Yeah, something like that. It's the same. Oh, and even this, yeah. I think that is very easy to read, easier than this anyway, and I don't think we're breaking any rules here. Yeah, so let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I think that's great. Why not? Why not do that? There was another thing I realized, this is a MuseScore thing. I had to look it up because I am not a very pro user of MuseScore. I'm working on it, and this sounds like a criticism or like I'm being snarky maybe, and I really don't mean to because I don't really like criticizing other music software. But I was wondering about changing these voices, and it turns out you can't change voices in a triplet. Like here, if I do this, I can just click this and make it I mean, you wouldn't do that, but I can make that a new voice by selecting it and clicking the voice thing. And if I do that here, what? It worked this time. Well, never mind that. Ah, okay, weird. Right, so there seems to be something about notes in triplets, and I did Google this, so I can switch this note. But what I wanted to do was make this also voice 2 or make this also voice 1. Maybe that's the issue. Yeah, I can't switch it to voice 1 because I was looking at this and I saw just a bit of an issue. Because these are written as separate voices, I kind of wanted to see either this be dotted, like the bottom note here be dotted, or this, or an eighth rest or something. I'm not sure if that's over-notating it, but I think the simpler solution would be just to have these both stems down, like have everything in the same voice. There's really no reason why, I don't think there's a reason why they shouldn't be in the same voice. In the same way, like I wouldn't put the top note stems up. So just something to think about. And yeah, you can Google, MuseScore changing voices in a tuplet, and you'll find, I think there's some workarounds. But of course, if this was written in 12/8, it wouldn't be an issue because there wouldn't be tuplets. So there you go. Okay, what else? So one thing you did that's very helpful, but could be written simpler, I believe, is you've given, where we switched from 12 to common time and vice versa, from common time to 12, you've given the like metric modulation information, which is really important. So the song starts at quarter equals 74, and when we switch to 12, what this is telling us is that the beat, like the big beat, stays the same tempo, right? So your metronome, if it's clicking along in 4/4, when we switch to 12, that metronome is clicking along on the dotted quarter instead of the quarter. I think this is important to have because I think by default, if you didn't have this, the eighth note is what stays consistent. So that is to say, the speed of the eighth notes in 4/4 would be the same as the speed of the eighth notes in 12/8, which would mean this section would be slower by a third or something. It would be slower or faster, I forget. It would not be good. So what you need to do is you need to override that by giving some tempo info. But there is a slightly more elegant way of showing this. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're instead going to put this in, which is this. Or it might be the other way around. It might be quarter equals dotted quarter. But this is just telling you that basically the beat unit of the previous section is the same as the beat unit for this section. This is something worth looking up. I think there was actually weirdly like a switch at some point. So you have two options, right? You could express this as the dotted quarter is the same as the quarter, which to me this makes sense. I see 12/8, I go, okay, what is the tempo? The dotted quarter, the tempo, is the same as the quarters of the previous part. But some people would say, well, what's on the left side of the equation is what is in the previous section, and what's on the right side of the equation is in the upcoming section. So this would make sense to them. They would say, okay, quarter, this unit, is the same as dotted quarter, this unit. And then with that logic, this would be backwards. This would be like saying a dotted quarter in this section is the same tempo as a quarter in this section. I believe there was a switch in how this symbol was interpreted at some point. If I have any info in any of my textbooks, I'll scan it and put it up. Anyway, so on the one hand, I think this is a more elegant way of expressing what you were trying to express. On the other hand, it's more ambiguous. So maybe just keep doing what you're doing, and that's better. It leaves less room for interpretation. Neat. Okay, 9, bar 9, dotted rest. What did I mean by that? Oh, yeah, right. This could be dotted, I think. There's a rule about, even if it's against the rules, I would just dot that rest anyway. I don't know. Does that look bad? Is that wrong? It feels so right. Don't know. Okay, just a thought. Bar 54. I'm consulting my notes here. Bar 54. Put whole note in right hand to save vertical space. What could I have possibly meant? I mean, maybe I meant like put this note up here, which you could. You could play with your right hand. Would that actually oh yes, of course. Okay. Right. Here's the thing. So you're again with the pedaling and rest situation. These could all be whole notes, dotted whole notes. Let's do that. If I do one, will it affect all of them? Yeah. Okay. I don't know how to swap staves. So the thing is, if you put this up here, then these stems would be flipped up, and it would just be a more unified looking line. And you can probably reach this note and this note. You can, yeah, it's an octave, so you could probably do it. It would just be easier to read. Okay, so that did something, but now this line is down here. I'm sure there's a way to reset that automatically, but here we are. Oh no. I guess there's some magnetic layout thing. Why? Okay, again, don't know how to use MuseScore. So that's just something that could save some space. New biggie. Okay, what else? Yeah, just generally nice tune. Oh, now here we're actually slower. Quarter equals 66. 12/8. Going in at... Well, you know what we can do? We can play it. And we'll put the metronome on. That was less of a shift than I thought it would be. So this is less of an engraving theory thing and more of a recording session thing or a rehearsal issue. If you can, you should avoid or at least be very careful with simultaneous tempo and meter changes, especially if the numbers don't obviously divide by each other, which I don't, I'm bad at math, so maybe there is some common 66 to 74 unit, but it would be easier just to say like slightly slower. But then I get that since we're switching from 12 to 4, you do sort of need that indicator. Or you could do a writ into it or something. That might actually be nice. Like if you writted, you know what I mean? If you writted into this bar and then did like dotted quarter equals quarter and then slightly slower or something. Anyway, just seeing a tempo change that's like not a common denominator of a previous tempo that lands on a meter change can be really difficult. In this case, I was surprised. It actually really works. Maybe it's helped by the fact that beat 1 is a staccato quarter note, so it gives your brain like just a split second to adapt to the new tempo. And also, I guess 74 is pretty darn close to 66, so it's almost an imperceptible shift. If it was anything larger than that, like larger than 10 BPM, especially at this slow tempo, it would be more of an issue. Okay, so just flagging that if you have to do like a rehearsal or something. Bar 68 stems is what I wrote. 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, okay, we already covered that. Page turns, P sub, 9 dotted rest. Ignore that. That's probably my fault. Now we're just into splitting hairs kind of territory, but I feel like this molto passante is should be bold. I think this looks like very plain text. I feel like since it's kind of a tempo / feeling text, it would look better if it was bold. Not totally sure about that. Yeah. Otherwise, like, basically what you gotta do. There's some people have a checklist of things to go through when they're editing something or when they're preparing something to print, and it would be like page turns. So you would go through the entire piece looking for page turns. Then you go back to the beginning, dynamics, make sure that all the dynamics make sense. You go back to the beginning, look for technique text. Maybe piano is a little, well, no, it's not simple, but like one thing you can look for if you're doing strings or an orchestra thing is, have you put your bowings in and do the bowings make sense? Okay, so I do hope that this was helpful. There were a couple more submissions that I didn't have time to get around to, or that people either didn't send a PDF or an XML. There was definitely at least one person who sent a YouTube link, like a YouTube score video, which was a very cool song, and I absolutely would love to take a look at it, but it was a little cumbersome to, try and analyze music on a YouTube video. And I hope that this was helpful. and I am absolutely ready to take a few more submissions and do it again in a couple weeks. I would love to see some jazz charts. I'd love to see a string quartet. More choir stuff is always cool. If anybody has a music theater chart they want to show, that has a whole host of extra difficult considerations. And for anybody who's done an orchestral piece, like a full orchestra, who wants to also include instrumental parts, that would be very interesting to look at, particularly if the orchestral score has flute 1 and 2 combined in one staff. See what happens when you try to make a flute 1 chart and a flute 2 chart, and if you could submit something like that, that would be awesome, because that is pretty tricky. Okay, until next time, thanks.